I'm Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited because I finally made myself a TBR jar. I am challenging myself to a no buy TBR challenge that I'm going to take down this fall. I'm going to achieve this by using a couple different methods. I am a Kindle Unlimited subscriber. I will not count those as books that are purchased because I already purchased the monthly subscription. I'll also use my physical TBR. I have quite a few books around the house that I've been trying to finish reading. And then of course, if you've been around my channel, you know I am quite the library lover. So I will be using my library to make sure I can complete this challenge without having to spend any extra money. Today, I'm going to pick my first 3 prompts, and the way that I'm going to do this challenge is I'm going to pick 3 prompts to start, and then once I finish a prompt, I will put it back and pick a new one. So I already picked my 3. I am a person who is trying to film and create content for many different platforms, so I shot it as a short form. So I'll just go ahead and talk about what I did, what I grabbed, and then ultimately what I ended up picking to read. It's not just going to be TBR Jar Challenge Day, though. I also want to go through my August reads because I had an absolutely fantastic reading August. I am in my romantasy era, so I took down quite a few books in the Zodiac Academy series, as well as the whole Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series. Then I also had a good bit of time breaking a romance slump, and I ended up finding some really good romance books in August. So I'm going to talk about them with you all. As I mentioned, I did go ahead and already pick my first 3 prompts. What I wanted to do was I wanted to see how long it was taking me to finish these prompts as well. So I picked them and then I put the date on the back of which I picked them. So the first prompt that I chose from my TBR jar was the first book that you see on TikTok. And I wanted to make sure that I had my video evidence. This honestly could have gone anyway. This could have been really bad. So here we go. This is my first pick. I picked this one on September 3rd. And this is the first book you see when you scroll TikTok, which honestly could have been anything. I will say it did take me a little bit to get to a book, but that I found one, and thankfully it was one that I have on Kindle Unlimited. My pick was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I've seen this author's name around, but I haven't actually read any of her books just yet. The Naturals is a series. It's a YA series. It follows Cassie. She is a 17-year-old who is a natural at reading people and details and picking up on clues that other people kind of just let pass by. This leads her to being tapped by the FBI to join a underground task force of teenagers that are working to crack infamous cold cases for the government. So this is a YA thriller. Not one that really reads a lot of thrillers, but I think a YA thriller is great to just dip my toe into the genre. And reading a lot more YA this year, and I found that it's just really nice to be able to connect to the story in a different way, connect to younger characters in a story, kind of going through some of the grow-up process with them. It's really nice to look back also on those times of your life as an adult. Excited to start this one. I actually think that I'm going to start this one, The Naturals, with you all in this video and start this today. I am only reading 3 books right now, which, you know me, I like to juggle a lot of reads. So I'm due to start one today, and I think The Naturals is going to be my pick. Now, my next grab from the TBR jar was not a kind one. And I specifically remember when I was writing these prompts, I was like, oh goodness, I hope I don't get this one right off the bat. I would like to give myself a little bit of a break before I do this, but I ended up picking it second. And that is a book published the year that you were born. So I'm also, I guess, going to age myself. So I was born in 1994. To start, I really had to do a little research. I popped open my Google and I just wanted to start searching what were popular books in 1994. I ended up finding a book called Just for the Summer. And I was like, wait, that's hilarious because Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez has been a really big reading book of 2024. But this is Just for the Summer written by Judy Astley. Ashley, it's like Ashley with a T, which is horrible for me to try to pronounce. But when I did end up looking this book up, it was not available on Kindle Unlimited, unfortunately. So instead of looking to my library, I decided to just keep searching for books that were written in 1994. An author that I've seen around a ton but I've never read. This is Janet Ivanovich, and this is one of her series, actually. So when I started searching, the first book in this series came out in 1994, the year that I was born. I was like, that's fantastic. And then I kept looking it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this series isn't complete yet. The 33rd book in the series comes out in November of this year. So I was like, that's perfect. People clearly love this series. This is the Stephanie Plum series. The first book is called One for the Money. And Stephanie Plum is a New Jersey gal. She is she's been down on her luck a little bit. And she is trying to get into her cousin's bail bondsman business. She is going to take on a bounty for herself, become a bounty hunter. But unfortunately, her first mark is actually somebody from her past, a guy that ended up convincing her to lose her virginity to him. So even though it's a book that was made in 1994, it sounds like exactly all of the plots to the romance books that I read today. So I thought that would be a really cool place to start. I'm sorry, I ended up getting cut off there. But I was really excited that I found this Stephanie Plum book available on Kindle Unlimited. I haven't read Janet Ivanovich before, so I don't know if the whole series is, but this will be a really fun place to start. My last little TBR jar prompt that I pulled was one that was really easy for me to know exactly what I wanted to read, and that is a book that was released this year. And I'm going to continue on with the Rose Hill series, and so I'll be reading Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series, which is Wild Love, which was Rosie and Ford. This is Rosie's older brother, Ford's best friend, Wes. And Wes is a single dad. I don't know anything else about what's going to go down. I know he's a little grumpy, so I can imagine some grumpy sunshine love stuff happening. So those are the 3 opening prompts that I have for my TBR jar. And then for full transparency's sake, when I got cut off earlier, it was because my mic died. And when my mic died, I continued on for about another 45 minutes. I talked all through all of my August reads for like a really long time. And then I started filming another video, all with my dead mic. So, as you can guess, all of that footage is absolutely useless, and I have been trying to lift my spirits ever since that occurred. It's funny, so I was filming for another video, and I mentioned that it was 2:40. It was almost 3, but it was 2:40, and I didn't want to speed through my last 20 minutes. Well, it is now 3:01, and I discovered that all of that work is pointless anyway, so at least I figured it out while I was still all done up and dressed and ready. It could have been a lot worse. I could have discovered that all of this footage was unusable when I was sitting down to edit, so at least that is good. But I do want to just quickly go through my August wrap up. I apologize that you don't get to live through my long, drawn out explanation of all the books that I read in the month of August. I don't know what it is about my wrap up videos that are so hard for me to sit down and film, because I like the books that I read. I should like sitting down and talking to you about them, but I keep running into these problems. I had this month, I had this problem with my audio. When I filmed this video in July, all my audio was fine, but it was all my angles were so bad. I couldn't even post it. I was like, I really didn't like this at all. I ended up talking about my July reads in another one of my videos, but yeah, I don't know why I'm struggling, but I do want to take you along for my August reads because I had a really great reading month. It was 15 books, 7,222 pages, and those are pages of completed text because I start some other books that I don't know how to fit those into my stats yet, but I'm actually working on that right now, and that's something that I'm going to talk about in my what I read in a week video, which is coming up. Back to my August reads. As I mentioned earlier, I'm in my romantasy era, so even though I've been reading romantasy all month long, I'm going to save all of those books for the end of this video and start with my romance and contemporary genre books first. And that leads me to start with two books I talked about in my Olympic-sized romance reading challenge. That is Bridesmaids for Hire and Icebreaker. Icebreaker is by Hannah Grace. Bridesmaids for Hire is Megan Quinn. There were some good parts about both of these books and some not so good parts. I didn't really love our male main character in Bridesmaids for Hire, but I really liked Megan Quinn's. I like her writing style. I'm a fan of hers. I've read books of hers in the past, and what I like is that she has a really good way of writing spice into the story, and it makes sense. She also used some of the spice in like a humorous way, so there's always some light-hearted, humorous moments in Megan Quinn books that I appreciate. That was a 3-star read for me. And then Icebreaker was a 4-star read for me. One of the things I really liked was the modern take. It seems like a very modern relationship. They had really, really good communication, and I liked this green flag communication approach. If you want to listen to my more in-depth thoughts of both of these books, I covered them for 40 minutes in my Olympic-sized romance reading challenge part 1. And if you're wondering where part 2 of that challenge is, I found myself in a little bit of a romance slump, unfortunately. So I had to take a break with that challenge. I was supposed to read Flawless by Elsie Silver, which I did, and Not in Love by Ellie Hazelwood, but unfortunately I couldn't get through Not in Love. It is a current DNF for me because I'm struggling with the workplace aspect of that story. But I did end up reading Flawless. Flawless was fine for me. I like Elsie Silver's writing. I like the world that she's created with Chestnut Springs, but I didn't really like Rhett as a character, our main male character rather. He's a bull rider, and our female main character, Samantha, she has her law degree and she works at a sports agency for her dad, and Rhett is one of their clients. I really liked, like I said, the world that was created here, but there was one main storyline. It's Samantha's past, like her background storyline, that I felt was a really serious storyline that wasn't actually played to completion. I thought it was really unsatisfying the way that it was brought up and then kind of not dealt with, and it is a pretty big storyline. So it felt weird to me to write something that intense but then not actually deal with it, other than the fact that it made Samantha, our female main character, it changed her, helped change, it turned her who she grew into. So we got to see that storyline play out in that way, but there was no other satisfying thing that happened with that storyline, so it felt really forced for me, and I didn't appreciate the severity of it. And so for my next Olympic-sized romance reading challenge, I'm going to talk about Flawless, and then my replacement for Not in Love was the book that I read to beat my romance reading slump, and that was The Paradise Problem. The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. It's their new book this year. It was so good. I had waited so long for this book. Literally, when I saw it was available at my library, I put myself in line for the hold, and I was 42nd. So I waited quite a few months to read this one, and I'm just so happy I did. This was Annie and Travis, who are in a marriage of convenience. They get married when they're in school because Annie is looking for free housing, and she doesn't know, but Travis needs to get married in order for his inheritance to kick in. So Annie is friends with Jake, who is Travis's little brother, and they make the connection. They get married, but don't really, are basically just roommates. They keep to themselves, they leave school, and Annie is a struggling artist who gets fired from her day job, and Travis has been lying to his family the whole time, saying that he's in this actual marriage with Annie and that she is a medical student studying in Cambodia, which couldn't be further from the truth. So she is down on her luck. She just lost her day job, and he shows up at her house offering to pay her to go to his family's wedding and act like his wife. It was so good. It was all of this luxury. It was a very similar setting to Bridesmaid for Hire, and reading it afterwards kind of gave me all of those feelings that I wanted to have, like all the things that the other book missed out on. The Paradise Problem did a really good job hitting. I really liked that. The other great thing about this book was that it felt like the TV show Succession. Travis's family is like the Roy family. Even like Jake, the little brother, absolutely acts like Roman in Succession. It was really funny. So if you like that show, you'll have an extra appreciation for this book. It was a really, really good one. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 stars. There were just a couple things that were predictable for me, but that doesn't matter. It was still a really good tale. The next book I had read as a palate cleanser between Zodiac Academy books, and this is The Villain Edit by Lori DeVore. 5-star read for me. This was fantastic. This one is about an author. Her name is Jack, and her series sells, but unfortunately her first book doesn't really do well. So she's given this influx of cash. She's living her dreams in New York City, but the money is starting to dwindle out. She decides she's going to move home to Charleston, South Carolina, but then decides she is going to audition to be on the latest season of The One, which is basically The Bachelor. Before Jack goes and starts on the show, she flies out to LA. She has a night at a bar. She meets a fantastic man. They have a great one-night stand, and then she goes and starts the show, not realizing that the man that she met at the bar is actually one of the producers. So she gets there and she's in a very sticky situation, and she also finds that she's struggling to connect with the other women on the show. Really good. If you're a fan of any type of reality television, you'll eat this book up. And one of the coolest things that Lori did was she used a bunch of mixed media to tell the story. After every chapter, you got a little bit of media from her. What I mean by that is when you watch a show nowadays, like watching a show that airs live, I watch Big Brother. I can watch that on television, I can stream that, but then I can also go online and I can talk about it. I can read other people talking about it. There are live streams, there are podcasts, there's all this extra media around the television show. So what Lori did was she created those types of media and put them at the end of every chapter. So you would be reading with our female main character, Jack. You would see what she was doing on the show and what she was going through on the show. But then afterwards, you would get to read how it was perceived by the fans. You got a little bit of insight into the edit that she was actually given. She mentions that during things. She'll be like in the middle of a fight or like something happening and she'll say, but that's not the line they used on the show, or and things like that. So that little bit of mixed media just, it was so enjoyable. It made me eat this story up, and I was guessing up until the last page, no clue how it was going to end, and I loved the way that she ended it. Sometimes you have a really good story, and it's a lot of times I talk about this with television. It's a really good story, but they can't land the plane. That was not the issue here. Absolutely. Laura DeVore landed that plane perfectly. And the villain edit is one that you need to recommend to your TV loving friends. And then, as I mentioned before, I am in my romantasy reading era. So I'm reading the Zodiac Academy series, and then this month I finished up the prequel series, which is The Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac. The Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series is a prequel series set 5 years before Zodiac Academy, and it's in the world of Solaria, but it's not in where the Zodiac Academy is. It's in a place called Alestria, which is a kind of poorer part of Solaria. They leave this territory to be run by the gangs, and this is where Aurora Academy is, which is where our main character, Elise, is going to go. So in the first book, Dark Fae, it opens up and you're trying to figure out, Elise rather, is trying to figure out who murdered her brother. He was found overdosed on Killblaze, which is a Fae drug, and she was told clues about his murder and was told that he was taken by a king. So she decides she's not going to tell anybody who she is. She's going to take her brother's place at the academy, and she is going to investigate herself and hold whoever killed her brother accountable for his murder. Knowing that she is going after a target that is a king, we are introduced to the boys that are in the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series, and those are our kings. If you've read Zodiac Academy, the 4 boys in that series are the heirs. So the kings of Solaria are similar to the heirs over in Zodiac Academy. The first book, when I read it, was probably a 3-star read for me, but now that I've finished up the series, absolutely a 4-star read for me. It is a little bit different of a perspective because when you're reading the first couple books of Zodiac Academy, you have a lot of the twins' perspective and they don't really know the life and the way of the Faes. So you're learning a lot with them, but Elise has been a Fae her whole life. She knows nothing but the way of the Faes. So you jump in and she is already like in the Fae world. So I think I remember saying when I started it, it was a little darker and a little grittier than Zodiac Academy, even though the Zodiac Academy, it's a bully romance. Like, they're mean to them. But 4-star read for me. Nothing else I want to say about this one because I don't want it to be spoiled for you, but I really did love this series, so I'll just generally talk about the next 4 books and why I think you should read them. Second book is Savage Fae, and by Savage Fae, you are starting to really like enjoy our characters. Elise can't really trust anyone, and so you kind of feel like you can't trust anyone either. But then there are some things that happen, and your heart starts to it starts to melt a little bit, starts to warm up. The third book, Vicious Fae, at that point you are completely hooked to our characters and to our storyline, and there are so many big events that happen in this one. This one ended, and I remember I was like, oh my goodness, I was so happy where we were in the story. I'm afraid because this thing happened, and now this thing is going to make it all not good for everyone else in the story. But I continued on to, I think, Savage Fae is next. No, Broken Fae. Broken Fae is 4. And if I thought 3 ended in a cliffhanger, I had no clue what I was talking about because 4 was actually the craziest cliffhanger. Just another really, really good book. And then that one, so 4 was the first 5-star read for me. Broken Fae was my first 5-star of this series. All of the other books before that are 4-star reads in my mind. And then finally, our 5th book, Warrior Fae, that is absolutely a 5-star read in my head. They just ended it so good. And because it was ended so well, it gives me a lot of hope for the way that the Zodiac Academy series itself will end, because the last book gave you everything that you wanted. I remember I got to like the last 10% and I was nervous because I was like, there's not enough book left. I was wrong. There absolutely wasn't enough book left. Everything that needed to be wrapped up got wrapped up. And now that I'm back in the Zodiac Academy, the world of Solaria is so much better for me because it's not just Gabriel Knox's character, who you get introduced to in Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac, and he ends up being a main character in Zodiac Academy. I have now counted 9 instances of characters that we met in the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac in Zodiac Academy, which is making all the other little crumbs so much better. It's making the story, yeah, just so much better. I'm so happy that I did that. I am so happy that I ended up stopping Zodiac Academy for Shadow Princess. I stopped after the first 100 pages of that book in order to start the prequel series, and I'm so glad that I did. I ended up going back and starting Shadow Princess again, and like right off the bat, I was rewarded for reading the other series. So if you want to give them all a read, they're worth it. And especially people that enjoy Zodiac Academy, I think you'll love the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac. One thing I want to do before I jump back into the Zodiac Academy is talk about my favorite boys from the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac, and it's Gabriel and Ryder. I loved Ryder so much. So much. I liked Leon, but Leon reminds me a lot of Seth from ZA, so sorry, Leon. I have little love for Seth, so kind of feel the same way about you. And I wanted to like Dante, but I thought the Fatalion was cringy. It was so cringy. Like, it was funny. I think that's my thing. It was hilarious to me, so it wasn't sexy. Like, it was just like, oh, that's funny. So because of that, his character isn't my favorite. But again, he's another one. Dante is another one that popped up in Zodiac Academy. So I'm going to read that. Yeah, reading Shadow Princess, I think, is kind of like the turning point of the series now that I'm in the place I'm at. This is where the emotional trauma really starts to set in. It was like trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. And afterwards, I was like, well, my heart hurts. But thankfully, in the reading order, you pop into the 2 novellas after that. So after I read Shadow Princess, I popped into the first novella, which took us back in the past, and that was the 0.5 Origins of an Academy Bully. That is Lance and Darius's point of view, and they're talking about the former night of the lunar eclipse where everything happened with Clara. So we know what happened at this point, but we didn't get to kind of read it or hear it from anyone else's perspective. It was just a story told to us. So what that novella does is go into depth of that night. And it also talks about the guardian bond between Darius and Lance some more. Then I popped into the second novella, which is the Big a.s.s party, which is Geraldine and Max, their night of the lunar eclipse, and then leads into a scene that we didn't actually get to see that would have happened in the time of Shadow Princess, the book, and that is the Vega twins' birthday party. Super fun. Both of those were like under 100-page novellas, so I finished them literally, I think, the days I started them. I don't remember if I read them both together, but from there, I did continue my Zodiac Academy read. I started 5, which is Cursed Fates, and that is, like I said, I think 4 was a turning point for trauma. So 5 continued on. Oh no, I messed that up. Okay, so I did read 5 before I read the 2 novellas, and that is the way the reading order hit. In 5, that was the one that was full of more emotional trauma. They're kind of all full of emotional trauma, but I do want to while I say that, put a note out there. My friend Hannah was actually asking, she's been reading a lot more this year as well. She was asking if she should start the Zodiac Academy series, but she didn't know if she wanted to because of the way that I and other people talk about the trauma that you're going through while reading it. But I didn't really know how to explain it until I thought about it in this way. Our main characters are like kids. They're just barely adults. They're 19, 20, 21. So a lot of the things that happen in this book are sad, but they're dramatized by it being a teenager's point of view. Also, a lot of the things that happen are based on politics, world building, and things that are only true in Solaria. So because of that, it's not relatable. And because these are non-relatable tragedies, it kind of helps. They're sad, but they're not overwhelmingly sad. That's what I'll say. It is a low stakes trauma read. You're probably not going to read these things and be like, oh God, wow, that sounds exactly like what I'm going through right now, because it's just not. It's just not. So I hope that if you have been wanting to read the Zodiac Academy series, you haven't been dissuaded by people talking about how emotional and traumatic the books can be, because it's only emotional and traumatic because you like the characters. There's nothing that actually unsettles me about this book. The other thing that I see people talking about with these books are that they are non-consensual touching, and that they can get a little grapey. And I agree, there is some non-consensual touching that happens, but it's not always sexual touching. And a lot of times the non-consensual touching leads to fighting and leads to people standing up for themselves. This is a bully romance. Like, everybody has said it. I heard it a million times when I was listening to people talk about this. So I think you just kind of have to keep that in mind. A bully romance every book isn't going to end in a happily ever after. Like, it's not. There are absolutely romantic elements of the story. These are some spicy fays if you've been reading. But I did want to just note the trauma is not as traumatic as booktubers and book creators have made it seem. Now, I'm in the first half of the 7th book, so I still have a few to go, but that is my take on the subject. So yeah, my stats for August were great. 15 books, 7,222 pages, and I'm hoping to keep reading maybe more this month. I think my page count will be higher this month just because the Zodiac Academy books and the ones that I have left are thick. They are 8, 9, 1,000 pages. They're big ones. So I think my page count will be bigger, but my book count might be smaller. But that's okay, because I've already doubled my Goodreads reading goal, and I am hoping to triple it. I should be there soon. I might even quadruple it, and then don't know what I'm gonna choose for my next year's Goodreads goal. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and seeing how my first TBR jar polls went. I have a lot of really great ideas for the fall, and I want to continue to grow this community. So I just really appreciate you for taking the time to follow me and watch my stuff and be here to hang out with me. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a great day.